Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US launches airstrikes on ISIS targets in Syria after death of 2 American soldiers by ISIS on December 13 in Palmyra. US says dozens of targets tied to the ISIS targeted. Thousands of long-awaited Epstein files released. U.S. Justice Department published the first batch of documents featuring Bill Clinton and Michael Jackson. Files show little mention of Trump. Bangladesh government urges its citizens to resist all kinds of violence committed by fringe elements after the death of 32-year-old July uprising student leader Sharif Osman Hadi. US US halts a green card lottery after MIT professor Brown University killings. Police say misinformation on complicated Brown University shooting probe. Gaza Civil Defense says 5 killed in Israeli shelling of a shelter. UN Secretary General says the ongoing scale of human suffering in Gaza breaks his heart. 2 killed in smoke grenade knife attacks at Taipei metro stations. A suspect also dies after falling from a metro station. US antitrust agencies clear Nvidia's investment in Intel. Nvidia said in September it would invest $5 billion in Intel, throwing its heft behind the struggling US chip maker in a deal that could pose risks for rival manufacturers, Taiwan's TSMC and US-based AMD. All right, viewers, let's start with the top focus on NewsX World. Now, the United States Department of Justice has released thousands of documents and hundreds of images related to late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, but has held back thousands more files despite a law requiring their disclosure by December 19. The latest release of Epstein material was mandated by an act of Congress, which set a deadline of midnight Friday. The Republican leaders worked for months to stop the legislation. It passed the House and Senate nearly unanimously in November and was then signed by US President Donald Trump. Trump had opposed any release of new information for months and had pressed Republicans to block the bill requiring it. But facing a revolt among his supporters, he reversed himself and urged its passage. All right, let's welcome our guests in this discussion. We are joined by Matthew Wadham, who's an American author and journalist. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. We also have Shruti Dasgupta. She's an international affairs expert. And we also have Ross Feingold, who is a political analyst. And I welcome all our guests in this discussion. But I'll start with my first question to Matthew. Matthew, the files has been released as per the deadline that was stipulated. But just being mentioned in the file or having images there does not really indicate any wrongdoing. So how much impact is this release of the first batch going to have?
Well, you know, anybody, because of the environment of hysteria over the Epstein files, anybody who is mentioned in them is going to receive adverse publicity and should be concerned about it, even if they've done absolutely nothing wrong. For example, there's photos of there's I understand there's plenty of photos of Donald Trump that have been released, but none of them are incriminating in any way. And you're going to see pictures of him with women, and that doesn't prove anything. Okay, that's just um, he's there with women. What does that prove? The fact that he's there with a woman, that he knows women, that he's been to parties with women, that he's been to receptions with women. It doesn't prove anything. But every time that President Trump gets mentioned or appears in photographs and whatever in the Epstein files, people are going to use it against him and saying, "Oh, say there, we told you so." That he is he's some kind of a that he's some kind of a sex abuser who was behaved improperly at Epstein Island or what have you, when in fact he early on years ago rejected Jeffrey Epstein once he got an idea of what Epstein was really up to, and he banned him from the premises at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's home in Florida. So, anybody who's there in the Epstein files is going to have probably a rough time because people are going to say, well, this is proof, that you're in the Epstein files. This means you're a bad person and you were up to no good. And they're going to use it to smear the person no matter what. Now, that doesn't mean that the Epstein files won't uncover actual wrongdoing. I haven't seen many of them. I tried to log on earlier today, and I got a message saying that the site was overwhelmed with requests, and I would have to wait, and I didn't have time to wait. So um, we have to wait and see what is gonna happen and what is actually released. But so far, it's my understanding is that nothing has come up that's actually incriminated President Trump, and that's the thing that some people are worrying about. And President Trump, is not happy about these files being released, but he signed the bill that Congress passed that orders it. But he knows that every time that he's mentioned in some way, people are going to use it against him, and so I guess that's why he was nervous about their release.
What do you think? What has been the criteria to release this batch of files? There are only selected files, only thousands of images that have been released in the first batch. And many are arguing there's hardly any mention of Trump in the first batch that's been released.
Right. Right. Well, I'm not sure what criteria the Department of Justice was using because the legislation, as you probably know, authorizes the Attorney General of the United States, who at the moment is Pamela Bondi, to release uh, all the material in the Epstein files and without regard to whether the disclosure of that material will embarrass the person concerned. But the Department of Justice, Attorney General Bondi, is allowed to redact information pertaining to victims and pertaining to ongoing investigations, and there might be a few other narrow um, uh, exceptions to releasing the information. I think that the law said they're supposed to release everything by December the 19th, and my understanding is they haven't. But what are people
19.
going to do? Are people going to sue and say, "Oh, well, you didn't release it on time"? And then as long as the DOJ, governments are inherently inefficient, and maybe they had their pants down, to use an expression, caught with their pants down, and they didn't get it all out on time. But as long as they get it out, the rest of the material that is required by federal law to be released in the incoming days, I don't think it's going to be a problem, even though people are going to complain, no matter what, because this issue has been so hyped for so long. People are going to get, very upset, no matter what. But so that's I think where it stands right now. This has been such a hyped issue, and basically we know so much about Epstein already. The only thing that could possibly be of real, interest to any serious inquirer would be are there other people, famous people, celebrities, or important people or politicians who were deeply connected to Epstein and whose identities have been shielded from the public for the time being. This is what people want to know, including a lot of President Trump's supporters who voted for him because he promised to provide transparency on the issue, and I think he will, but it seems that the government is struggling to release the information on time, and so it may be delayed a little bit. If the delays persist, it's going to be a big political problem for President Trump. But if they get them cleared up in the next few days, I think people will be inclined to be more forgiving.
All right. Thanks, Matthew, for your comment there. But do stay on, as I'd like to continue my discussion with you. I'm also joined in by Shruti Dasgupta,
Okay.
who's an international affairs expert. Shruti, very good morning to you. Shruti, how do you think it's going to impact the midterm polls that are due in America next year, with the mention of Trump time and again in these documents?
Well, good morning to you and your viewers and the other panelists on the show for this. I do understand that this would not have any impact on the voters, unfortunately, and that is the reality. As I've said before, that by the slow release of photographs and information, they're kind of making people immune to the entire Epstein issue. So what they've done with this, I think about 8,000 some photographs that they've released when they were supposed to release all the 95,000 documents related to the Epstein files, what they've managed to do is showcase Republicans or Bollywood stars or other mega giants, tech advisors or, people, rich people in meetings or in conversation with them and with Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. So they are trying to present an alternative narrative to what was being suggested by the Democrat Oversight Committee and try to balance it out by doing the dole outs in small bites and give their supporters the fighting power. So unfortunately, there's no justice in this one because it's heavily redacted. And the redaction, it comes under the clause that if there are cases pending then, but I do not know any case that is pending as of now related to the Epstein files. So the redaction in themselves seem highly suspicious until and unless they're protecting the identity of the victim. Apart from that, any other redaction is just political pull and push. So, and beyond that, there is this wonderful set. I was just going through those files that were released. There's this wonderful set of forms, where they could tell their particular fetish. And I have a female for him, and those kind of, I have somebody for this one, or this boy or person requested for this one. So a kind of, unfortunately I'm sorry for this, but a sex on order kind of attitude towards the entire deals that were happening with the Epstein thing. So it's dirty, but it's not something that they didn't know about or did not suspect about the Epstein files. It is just basically showmanship as of now, what the Democrat Oversight Committee has released or what the DOJ has released. There is absolutely nothing new beyond revealing the entire depth of filth that was part of it.
Shruti, now, of course, like you mentioned, the files are heavily redacted, and then the documents also, some may not even be made public if there's an active criminal investigation, or, if it identifies victims or, show images of abuse. So, I mean, how does this even impact the release of these files? Really, it's just evidence, that too, very sieved evidence that's been put forward. It's, I believe, only to pacify some of the Democrats and those who've been pushing for the release in the stipulated deadline.
So the Democrats are saying that the heavy redaction and the piecemeal release, because they are going there, that's what
Yeah.
they've said, they'll release it in small bites over weeks. Instead of complying with the order and releasing it in one go, they're going to do piecemeal release. So for Democrats, this entire issue turns into protecting Trump or being very, very sure that Trump does not get featured in a bad photograph, or if there is some evidence like that, or a Republican which is of importance gets featured like that, that particular file gets redacted under the clause. That's what the Democrats are saying. And while they are talking about while the files are pretty open about Clinton and Michael Jackson and all the other people, it does not affect the Republican per se. The MAGA group feel happy that, look, we were justified in rejecting the Democrats in the voting system. So this conversation is obviously there. What they are managing to do is release a large amount. I believe there are 8 pages that is just simply redacted. What is the point of releasing that?
Yeah.
It is just taking away the political currency between both parties. After the release of all these 95,000 documents, no matter how heavily redacted, nobody is ever going to be able to use the Epstein file as a campaign motto. So which is what has happened in the past with the 2024 elections. Epstein files was a very major deal that the MAGA group felt very, very strongly about. They still do. Republicans are still pressuring Trump about it. But by releasing it, however, whatever, it is no longer political currency. No matter how many weeks it takes, it's all out there. Whether it is redacted or not, it is never going to see the light of day beyond this release. That's what it means.
Okay. In fact, Matthew, I requested to come in and respond to those allegations and claims. And in fact, it's a fact very much that the files are indeed redacted.
That the files are redacted? Yeah, well, I confess I haven't seen the redacted files. As I said earlier, I tried to get on the Epstein files disclosure website, and I couldn't get on it because earlier this afternoon because it was being so heavily trafficked. It said, to come back. There was a message, something the effect of try later. So I don't know. But if there are heavy redactions, then this is going to be a problem, even if the Epstein Transparency Act passed by Congress allows it. People are going to be upset because they want to know what happened, and they want to know about these public figures who supposedly are being associated with the late Jeffrey Epstein. So a lot of redactions. Even if it's legally permitted, people are still going to be angry and anxious about it.
All right, do stay on with us, Shruti and Matthew. Let's give our viewers some more information that's coming in. Let's tell them who are the people that have been mentioned in these documents. In fact, viewers, let's tell you that the released files include photographs of several people, which include names like Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew of Britain, and his former wife Sarah Ferguson, as well as Bill Gates. Also has images of popular celebrities and journalists, musicians, names like Michael Jackson, Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, singer and actress Diana Ross. In fact, Deputy U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche has said that the Justice Department has identified more than 1,200 Epstein victims, and also added that the department has redacted material that could identify these victims. And he's also informed the Congress that the release is not yet complete and that more documents are yet to be reviewed before publication. He has stated in his letter to the Congress that more than 200 Justice Department lawyers are right now reviewing the documents. And I'd like to bring back Matthew for a question here. Matthew, would you say that the Justice Department has failed to meet its legal obligations, given that only selected files have been released and the deadline that was stipulated has passed?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the Justice Department has failed to meet the obligations imposed on it by the Epstein transparency statute, and yeah, they have failed. The question is, what can anybody do about it? Are you gonna, if they're going to supply if the U.S. Department of Justice is going to come across with the documents in the next few days, I don't think it's going to be a problem. But if that doesn't happen, people are going to start to get anxious, and I think you're probably going to see lawsuits filed to force the government to actually come up with the files. So it appears the Department of Justice was not, adequately prepared, and for some reason they didn't release all the documents on time as they were required to do. Why this happened, I don't know. I can only guess. It's a government, and governments are inefficient, and who knows? If it's part of a larger strategy to drag this out over months, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's entirely possible it could be. If it is, I think that would be disastrous for the Trump administration, and that they should get their act together and get these documents disclosed to the public as they're required to be. I was also reading that the flight logs, supposedly Jeffrey Epstein provided flights to the place known as Epstein Island, and that data is also, those flight logs are also being withheld, and I don't understand, unless I missed that, and there's a redaction exception in the statute. I didn't see one, but it's possible I missed it. I'm not perfect. I don't know why the flight logs are being withheld, because the flight logs were something that the media, the U.S. media, focused on pretty intensively for years as being the key to understanding, as being one of the keys to understanding the larger Epstein scandal, and the fact that they're being withheld for the time being really puzzles me, actually. So the government's going to have to come up with the files. If they don't cough them up soon, I think there's going to be a backlash, and there will be lawsuits filed. If this was just some kind of a screw up, and they're going to have the documents out in the next few days, I think people will forget and everything will be okay. But we'll have to wait and see what happens.
All right, do stay on once again. Let's give our viewers some of the context that's coming in relation to the release of the documents. Viewers, let's tell you that the material is including a photo of Epstein appearing to hold a check that's bearing the US President Donald Trump's name, and another image from Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, which shows a copy of Trump's 1997 book, which is called Trump, The Art of the Comeback. It's there on a bookshelf. In fact, previously released records have also included Trump's name on flight manifests for Epstein's private plane and in an Epstein contact book that was made public during Ghislaine Maxwell's 2021 trial. Trump, however, has reportedly and repeatedly denied any wrongdoing or knowledge even of Epstein's crimes. The Justice Department says more documents will be released in the coming days. In fact, some reactions also coming in from the Democrats. Let's tell you. In Congress, the Democrats are sharply criticizing the Justice Department following this release of 4 long-awaited data sets. And they are saying that the files, of course, are heavily redacted. Files fall short of what the law actually required. The material, let's remind you, were published shortly after 4 p.m. EST and prompted immediate backlash over the lawmakers who described these as having lack of transparency. In fact, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has also said that releasing a mountain of blacked out pages violates both the spirit and letter of the law. More reactions coming in. Representative Ro Khanna, who co-authored the legislation mandating the disclosure, said the release was incomplete and non-compliant due to excessive redactions. House Oversight Committee Democrat Robert Garcia echoed also these concerns. He said the public was not given true transparency, and Senator Adam Schiff has in fact called the redactions completely unlawful, and he's urged Attorney General Pam Bondi to be called before the Senate Judiciary. the Senate Judiciary Committee to explain the Justice Department's actions. More reactions. Representative Ted Lieu accused the department of willfully violating federal law and demanded an immediate hearing from the Oversight Committee once the Congress returns. I don't know if Shruti still is with us. Do we have Shruti Dasgupta in the discussion? All right, let's go to Shruti. Shruti, now Trump, of course, continues to appear in these files, but the first release doesn't have much mention of him. But such kind of allegations, and of course, this is now evidence, but Trump has faced many such allegations even earlier from several women. There was a hush money trial, and then, you know, there were Me Too allegations on him. How long can the US president go on without being accountable on these accusations?
Well, first let me just issue a correction. You mentioned a check with DJT's sign on it. That has been something which he has sued Washington Post for, because that was not something that he says is his. It was just like a prank or a joke rather than actually his signature. And that kind of has a lot of ripples that goes through. So one of that is sorted there. Yes, Trump is not the ideal person. He's not someone you idolize, someone you want your child to become like, because he is arrogant, he is outspoken, he has a history of being sexually offensive. If I'm not wrong, at one point of time, even Ivanka Trump herself spoke about how her father was not really all there within the moral guidelines and ethical guidelines of behavior towards her. And he's made some really, really shameful statements regarding her, that if I was not her father, I would have, taken her out on a date or, slept with her and things like that. So he's not the ideal person. If your whole... The point is that if a person they know to be really, really outspoken, completely out of the moral, black and white zone, he lives in that damn green zone that we all talk about. And he's living there and he's championing himself there, and people still elect him. Are you going to then put him on a moral trial? People already know that he has played up hush money. They know that he's paid up, he's settled out of court for this thing. He has also, for all the cases that were filed against him before 2024 elections, there are so many of them have had non-criminal cases, and he's paid up money for it. He's paid up the court to let the case be done and over with. So people have been paying. He's been paying people left, right, and center. He's a businessman. The USA has elected a businessman with shady moral values. And if you think that the Epstein file, unless it actually shows him having consensual or non-consensual relations with a minor, they would not go up in arms against him, because they know he's not all there. They know he's a gray zone man. So this is, you cannot hold him to the moral standards that you usually hold world leaders to, because he has never professed or even proved to be a man of higher moral standards. He's a very normal, slick businessman who has been elected to power.
All right. All right. Thanks, Shruti, for your opinion there. I'm also now joined by Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst from Taipei. Thank you, Mr. Feingold, for joining us. Now, of course, there are several reactions coming after the release of the first batch of the Epstein files. We've told our viewers the names, some very high-profile people who featured in these files, including Prince Andrew, and then there's also Michael Jackson, there's Bill Clinton in a jacuzzi, there's Trump, but very less mention of the president in the first batch. Now the Democrats are giving reactions. They're accusing this release of having some lack of transparency, and that the files are heavily redacted. Would you want to add on to that?
It's true that there's already a lot of people who are dissatisfied with the number of documents that have been released, or to look at that another way, that have not been released. And there are people who are dissatisfied with the large number of redactions. Of course, the Department of Justice is going to say the redactions are necessary. to protect the names of victims, as well as to withhold images that displayed people's faces, such as minors, who it's really not appropriate to have that circulating in the public space. As far as what Congress could do about this, I'm not optimistic that they really can do much. The Republicans have a majority. The likelihood that the relevant committees are going to really go after officials at the Department of Justice, or even take the extraordinary step of contempt citations, which is in theory something Congress could do. I think that's very unlikely that Republican majorities are going to hold Justice Department officials from the Trump administration in contempt of Congress. So this will continue to be a matter of intense political dispute in the United States. It's certainly not going to go away with this massive release of documents within the last few hours.
All right, and how do you think it's going to impact Trump's approval ratings and his standing there in the U.S.?
The main issue for most Americans continues to be the economy. I don't think that this necessarily hurts Trump politically. Yeah, there are some of the MAGA voters who are disappointed with how the Trump administration has handled this. They do feel let down. They were told during the presidential campaign and after the Trump administration took office that this information would be released. And then the administration said, no, we're not going to release it. And then the administration was forced into doing so. That doesn't mean that those voters are going to vote for Democrats in the midterm election next year. That's highly unlikely. And we knew the midterm was going to be competitive, especially on the House side, maybe more so than the Senate side next November anyway. So can the Democrats benefit politically from this? Probably not as much as they're going to benefit from increased cost of living or increased cost of medical care, which is the hot political issue at the moment. There's also the foreign policy issues, such as what the administration is pursuing off the coast of Latin America, and potential military action in Venezuela, which might not necessarily go down well with the public. That remains to be seen. But frankly, I would not rank this as the highest issue that would be damaging to the Trump administration or to President Trump personally.
All right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Feingold, for your opinion for now. And with that, viewers, we'll slip into a very quick break, but do stay tuned as news and updates from around the world continue right here.